What's up, everybody? This is Steve Sterlacci, and today we are looking at the new Core OS 1.3 update from Neural DSP. So the 1.3 update is Neural's most ambitious update thus far for the Quad Cortex. If you have one or you've been following along with what's going on with this, it was in need of some heavy updating and definitely needs a couple of features to really play with the big boys like the fractal stuff and the helix type of stuff. This update is a great step forward in that direction. We got some really nice features, some new effects, and some really cool stuff. So they're really taking into account what the users are asking for and what they're looking for. And hopefully this is a excellent step towards a even brighter future for the Quad Cortex. So let's get right into it. The first thing, I'm a Windows user and they did fix the Windows drivers. I never personally had any issues with it, but some people did. That issue is now fixed. The biggest thing for me is the looper and the freeze. So we do have a looper now in the Quad Cortex, and I'll show you that right on here. So if you look here, you hit the looper and it takes you to your recording menu, and it's a very simple looper. It's nothing that's gonna, it's not gonna blow you away. It's not gonna be like a gigging looper where you can stack a lot of things on top of it and control what happens with the tracks. Really straightforward looper. You have 4 minutes and 44 seconds to record something. You can overdub over that and have your loops play. You have this mode where you're in your perform page. So when I'm in the perform, I can hit armed to record, but it's not recording yet. And it's going to wait for my signal. You can see in the top corner here, it's waiting for my signal. So once I start playing, it'll start recording you. I'm just going to undo that. And you have your regular looper things. You have one shot, which is going to be the one-time record. You have a half speed. You could change the speed. You can punch in, which is going to record over your current loop and erase what was already there. You have your play button and your reverse, which is all pretty cool, basic loop functions. Not something that I would typically recommend gigging with if you're going to be one of those people that does a lot of looping, but it's great for practicing if you want to just write a riff, or if you're just practicing over a chord progression, or even building presets. This is a really good and handy tool where if you were to put this first in your chain, instead of last where I have it, put it first in your chain, record a riff, and then once it's first, you can put all your stuff in the chain and you can tweak without having to play. And that's how I've always used loopers in my multi-effects units, putting them up first and building a preset off of it. And then it becomes a practice tool once the preset's built. Put it at the end. So the looper can be placed anywhere in your signal chain, and it can also handle preset changes as long as the other preset has a looper in it. So if you have two presets next to each other that both have a loop block in it, you can start your loop on one preset, bank over to the other preset, and your loop will maintain, which is really cool. So you don't have to have one sound or one preset for your loop. You could have a rhythm loop and you could have a lead loop. When you click over to the parameters page, there is a lot of cool features here. You have your playback level. You have the overdub level if you're going to play over it. You have your high pass, low pass filters. You have your thresholds. And you have 3 pages of parameters here where while you're recording, you could set it to toggle or momentary. Same thing with all the parameters. They're all able to be either toggle or momentary. And when you go to page 3, you see you have a quantize. So quantize means that you can set this to your tap tempo. So if you don't have it exactly perfect, it will actually take your performance and lock it to the tempo that you are providing on the tap tempo. And of course, all of the stuff in here is MIDI controllable if you have an external MIDI device that you want to just set all these controls to do all the functions. So something worth noting while you're on this page, when you're on the parameters page here, you're not controlling these. So these are no longer foot switches here. So what you're actually doing here is you're controlling what's happening underneath it. So when you're in the perform page here, this is the perform page. This is the parameters page. Parameters page, all your foot switches are not doing what they say here. So you want to make sure that you are in the perform page to have your foot switches be active. So when you are here is where you can do your changes, and underneath it is still bypassing all your effects. So you can see all the stuff that I was turning on and off here. That's all going on when you're under the parameter view. So something worth noting when you're first getting used to the looper is to be careful with that and make sure that when you're on that parameters tab that you don't accidentally bank off your preset or something. And the looper is also able to be used in all the modes, whether you're in preset, stomp, or scene mode. So don't know why it wouldn't be, but it's in the changelog and worth noting. That'll be the longest one of the video, I promise. And we're going to kind of fly through the rest of this stuff. We also have a freeze, which is something really cool. It's like the Electro Harmonics freeze pedal. And your parameters on here are really simple. I haven't touched any of these, and I don't think that you really need to. It's really cool if you ever want to practice over a drone. Basically what it does, it takes what you play and it freezes it and just sustains it so that you can have a nice bed to practice over. So I have this set to foot switch D. Makes it real easy to practice over if you want to practice over that droning chord. We also got a clipboard added, which is basically a copy and paste feature. Now when you have any block, you can pull up your block. You just have to tap on it, hit the 3 dots, and you have a copy device. And now if I were to paste this device somewhere, you'll now have the option to paste device from the clipboard, and you could tap that and your device will paste over. As far as amplifiers go, they added a Silver Jubilee, which is a famous Marshall amp. They also added an AC-15 from Vox, a Princeton, and a Tweed Bassman, which are all pretty standard go-to amps for many professionals around the world. Really nice additions here. Definitely no complaints about those. We also got a couple of different delays. We now have an analog delay, which is both mono and stereo, and a slapback delay, which is also both mono and stereo. And now this area is probably where the Quad Cortex recently was lacking the most, and that's in the chorus and modulation section. They added a bunch of different chorus pedals. We now have the Boss Wazacraft chorus pedal. It's called the Chief CE2W. We now have the TC Electronics Chorus 229T. We have what's called Chorus Engine, which is just, I assume, a Neural's proprietary chorus. We also have a Dream Chorus, which is TC Electronics Dreamscape. A Flanger Engine, again, that's probably NDSP's proprietary one. And the MXR Flanger, which is under MX Flanger. And all of these, and this is one of my favorite things that was a real bother for me in the Quad Cortex in the beginning, they're now all able to be assigned to the tap tempo function, which is really, really great. So if I open up a tremolo, for example, I now have the option to sync on and off instead of having to dial in the rate. That was really bugging me a lot because you'd have to like do math and figure out what tempo was, translate your tempo from BPM to Hertz, which was such a pain in the butt. But now you have this nice sync tab, which will just let you tap tempo your modulation effects. Huge, huge add in my opinion. On top of the amps, we have cabinets. We got a Princeton cab, we got the AC-15 cabinet, and we got the Bassman cab, which are just the standard what you'd have in a combo amp for those amplifiers that they added. We also now have a screen and volume lock, which is pretty cool. I think that they still need some work in this area, but I think it's getting there. This big volume knob, for me personally, I really like to control only one single output with this, but for some reason we are still stuck with a global function here. But now when you tap your power button, you have the option to lock the touch screen and the master volume. So now while I'm gigging, I can't touch anything, and you see it's got the minus numbers, but nothing's happening. So the main volume knob is currently locked, and it's just showing you the difference. So when you unlock it, that's what your change will be. We get it back to 0. So to unlock it, you'll see up there that it says it's locked. Hold it down. Now you're unlocked. Once that progress bar finishes out, it becomes unlocked. We also have new USB playback options. So if you swipe down and select the USB, you'll see that you have a bunch of different options here. And what this does is it allows you to control the audio that's being sent to the headphones while you're using the QC as a USB interface. Another one that was added is the tap tempo light. So now you can turn your tap tempo light on and off. I don't know if you can see it in that bottom corner right here. See, it's off. Turn it on and off based on if you want that or not. Another feature added is we now have a control for the LEDs, the brightness, which is just going to be down in your settings, device options, and brightness. And now you have your screen and your LED lights. So you can turn your LED lights all the way down, or you can turn them all the way up, depending on your preference while you're gigging. If you're on dark stages, you might not want it as dark. If you're in bright stages, you might want it brighter. So another good one for me personally that I really like, and I'm glad that they did, is a double tap to bypass. So you can just double tap the grid now and bypass something once it's selected. And I didn't like that you couldn't do that, that you were relying on pressing the button. We do, however, and this is a big gripe of mine. When you're doing a fresh preset or you're first building something, it still automatically assigns whatever you put on the grid to the first available foot switch, which I cannot stand, because usually I put my amp block in first and it assigns my amp and cabinet to a foot switch. I don't understand why that's a thing. Definitely a gripe of mine, but I mean, that's a small thing. I just unassign it, but something worth noting, a little bit of a pain in the butt. We also have mute and solo buttons on the outputs. So now when you're on your outputs, you can select what's going on here. You can mute or solo these. You can also now link them. So if you give it a firm press hold, these are now linked. So instead of having separate left and right volumes or having to just move both the sliders together, you now have one single option because these are now tethered. The tuner got a little bit of an upgrade and now it shows sense values. So you can see just how close you are to being in tune. And now it can also handle both inputs 1 and 2 simultaneously. And what's interesting about this is that they added it at the input. So the input signal is being muted and only sent to the tuner. So if you are using the looper or you have something playing through your Quad Cortex, that audio won't be muted. Only the input audio is going to be muted. So if I record a loop or I'm doing my freeze and I'm like, oh crap, I'm out of tune, I can tune and let the loop play so it's not just a random totally drop out in audio. And now some pretty big changes to how the scene parameters work. So prior to this update, when you were building a scene, you would just go into scene mode, make your changes, go out of scene mode, and it would just automatically save all of the changes that you were doing while you're in scene mode. That's not the case anymore. So now I'm just going to tap over to scene. Now you'll also notice this yellow tab up here now tells you what scene you're in, regardless of the mode that you're in. So if you're in preset mode or stomp mode, it'll tell you that you're still on scene C. So now the parameters thing. So when you're now building your scenes, say I want different amp settings for a different scene, now you have to press and hold. And you'll see now the A, B, C, D square shows up. And now that will let me change the way it used to be, where no matter what scene you're on, you're able to change and adjust the parameters. Now, something that's really, really important here that isn't mentioned in the changelog, but it's something that is super, super important in my opinion. If I'm going to switch, so say I'm switching back and forth from scene A to scene B, and you see I have those amps toggling back and forth. To do that now, I have to actually tell the bypass state to be controlled by scenes. So previously I would be able to just bypass it. And then when I go back to scene A, it would be on. But now you can see that became a global change and is reflected in all of my scenes. So now if I want this to only be on in a certain scene, I have to hold down the bypass. Press and hold once you see that A, B, C, D. It'll be on or off depending on the scene. So I'm going to double tap and bypass that because we can do that now. And now you'll see it start toggling and behave just like the old scenes used to. So again, that's something very important, and you can also unassign it. So that becomes basically now it's a parameter instead of a bypass assignment in terms of what's happening in the scenes. You also now, when you're changing, when you want to copy and paste or drag a block to a different path, it no longer copies it over now that you could just click and drag it over and it's not going to do anything about it. So that's a feature change. It used to be where if you dragged it to a different lane, then it would copy it over. But now it just works, in my opinion, as it should, where you just click and drag it over if you want to move it down there. So I think that's a quick summary of what's been added and what they do, how to use them. I built this preset for the 1.3 build. As you can see, it's called the Update 1.3 build. I'll upload this to the cloud so you guys can check it out. What we got going on here is we have basically I'm only using two scenes here, scenes A and B. And scene A, we're going to be utilizing the new bassman with the new bassman cabinet. And on scene B, we're going to be utilizing the new AC-15 and the new AC-15 cabinet. Those are the only changes as far as scenes go. So I'm going to live in stomp mode, swipe up. And now you say I have two choruses in here. I've got the Wazacraft one in stereo after the amp. And I have the Dream Chorus in mono in front of the amp, just as a preference. I've got the new analog delay here as a long delay. And I also have the new slapback delay in front of the amp because that's just, I feel like slapback should be in front of the amp. And I also have the freeze and the looper set here. You guys could take this preset and run with it, do whatever you want with it. I just wanted to put all the features that I could fit into one preset where it makes sense. I'll also be uploading a capture. This is my Moustortion from Ibanez. It's a vintage collectible rare pedal. I will be putting this capture also up on the cloud. And this vintage Nobles one is also up there if you guys want to check it out. All right, so here's the AC-15 scene, and we'll mess around here. All right, so let's hear what that Dream Core sounds in front of the amp. I'm gonna hit that analog delay on with this. And now I'm going to switch to the Wazacraft, which is now after the amp. Now go into scene mode, and we're going to switch over to the Bassman. So here's the settings on the Bassman. So now I'm going to go into stomp mode and see what these same pedals do. So that's a little bit about how to use the freeze. It's really simple to use. You just hit a chord and let it fly. So if you guys have any questions about the update or about this preset, let me know in the comments and I'll get right back to you. I'm going to upload this so you guys can check it out and let me know what you think. It was just a quick dial up showing what the update can do and what the new features sound like. So hope you guys dug this video. And again, let me know if you have any questions in the comments and I'll see you in the next one.